Welcome to the summit. I'm so excited that you're here today, and I am speaking with Amanda Dunbar. Welcome, Amanda.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So, I do have to admit, Italy is one of my absolute favorite places. I have been there many, many times. I love it. Uh, but why did you choose Italy? And then, more specifically, out of all the amazing, beautiful places in Italy, why did you choose the region that you're in?
I've actually had a very long professional career for about 23 years, and I've had the opportunity to travel globally to all kinds of places and also live globally, which has been incredible. But every time I visited Italy, I fell more in love with it. From the people, the language, the food, of course, the history, the culture. There's so many amazing things about Italy. As I was looking to make a pivot out of my professional career and go somewhere else, and I'm sorry, my dog is acting up right now. Sorry, I'm just gonna let him out real fast. Um, as I decided to make a pivot in my professional career, I wanted to move to Italy. I just knew one day I wanted to get there, I wanted to move, and I wanted to live in Italy and just enjoy a slower lifestyle. I think initially I was drawn also to the €1 home program that they have here.
Yes.
So that initially sparked my interest. And then the last 2 years, I've spent quite a few times making the trip to Italy to do exactly what are asking about, like where, there's so many incredible cities. How do you narrow it down to just one? So,
Hmm.
um, I did a lot of research in terms of cost of living, and I knew Northern Italy was going to be out of my price range if I wasn't going to be working. So I went back and forth between Puglia and the
Hmm.
Bari region and Sicily, where I ended up being. Sicily, I also did quite a few trips to Sicily. And the first time I was like, I don't know, like, I don't know if I could live in Sicily because it's so small. I
Hmm.
initially joined a lot of different Facebook groups as well. So expats in Italy, expats in Sicily. So just trying to get an understanding of their experience as well. And that's how I connected with a lot of people through Facebook groups. And that's how I got to know them. And I still went back and forth between Bari and Salemi, where I'm at. And what it ultimately came down to was the community. I found a group of people here that are other expats from all over the world that are here to do the same thing, buy a house, renovate a house, enjoy a slower lifestyle, and they're here to help each other as well. And
Right.
so it took me 2 years. I made probably 4 visits to this town before I made the decision to settle down. And I've been here about 9 weeks, and I keep meeting more and more like-minded individuals, and it just reconfirms every single week that I made the right decision.
Oh, that's fantastic. And there's no real right or wrong way to do things. I think what works for everybody is different, but definitely spending some time there, making trips, finding the right place is important because I mean, as you said, like Northern Italy's a lot more expensive, the weather's different, and having community is the one of the most important, if not the most important thing when we move somewhere because it generally takes time to meet people and things are just done differently. And for
Yes.
us, sometimes it just doesn't make sense why things are done the way that they're done. Um, but then having that community to help, to know where to maybe buy specific things or the process of getting things done. And especially as you said, you're looking to buy a house and renovate. But just before we get to that, You are there with your dog.
I
And
am.
so you brought your dog with you from North America, you're from the United States?
I am from the United States, but
Hmm.
I moved here actually from Indonesia, where I was based for
Oh,
work.
okay.
So I'm bringing my dog from Indonesia, which is a much more difficult process
Hmm.
because Indonesia is a high rabies country. So he had to get revaccinated. Then we had to wait for a teeter test, and then we had to wait 3 months. So the whole process was a 5-month process to get him here. It was not easy, but it's
No.
it's easy. But I didn't. To be fair, I didn't do my homework. I didn't realize it was going to take 5 months. I would have started the
Mm.
process earlier. Um, so yes, it's normally a lot easier. If you're all up to date on vaccines, it's pretty easy to move your dog from North America over to Italy.
Right, right. And it's just it's the time, right? Like getting those vaccinations easy, you bring them in, you do it, the testing, but it's that time. So preparing, and I know, and I don't know for sure about Italy, but I'm thinking it's possible that probably in August there may be places that won't transport pets, especially if they're having to fly, because I know in some countries when it gets too hot, they won't allow for the transportation of pets. And so that timeline really is something that people need to consider, whether it's redoing vaccinations, updating whatever they need, and looking into those rules and making sure that they're giving themselves substantial time on one end.
Yeah.
But then some things are on a very tight timeline and need to be done within a certain amount of time. And so to definitely do that, because many people there, of course they're bringing their pets with them. So it's good to
Yeah, I
know that it
mean,
was.
sorry, Italy is a very, very dog-friendly country. They can
Mhm.
go to, which is a big difference for us because we were in Indonesia, which is, 85% Muslim. So that's just a different environment with a dog. And now here, I mean, they have canine carts for when you go grocery shopping, and you can put your dog in the little, he can go grocery shopping with
Right.
me. He can go out to dinner with me. He can go to drinks with me. So yeah,
Mhm.
and I was lucky that, I have a Pomeranian, so he's small, so he flew in cabin with me. But yes, to your point, if you have a bigger dog and it has to go in the cargo, there's certain months that they can't do that. And, it's a nerve-wracking process bringing a big
Mhm.
dog. So I see online too about, they're family members, so you don't want to leave them
Yes,
behind. But
right.
especially if you have a big Great Dane, that is not an
That's
easy
not
task.
an easy move. It's
No.
not. I mean, it's possible.
Yes.
But it comes then down to planning, right? And
Yes.
making sure that that timeline, the expectation, knowing that they're not going to be sitting in the seat next to you. Um,
Well, unless you have the money to fly on like Bark Air,
True.
things
Again,
like that.
there's options. So it is doable. There's options, but that planning is definitely important, and knowing, because there are different rules from different countries. And I've even known too that depending upon what city you're flying into, there can be different rules. Because when I first moved to Costa Rica, I brought my dog, and I was talking to the airline, and I said, somebody else had said something different. And he's like, oh, well, if you're flying into this city, these are the rules. But since you're flying into this city, these are the rules. And I said, but it's the same country. He said, oh, I know. He said, when we fly pets into Germany, we fly into 5 different countries and we have 5 different sets of rules for what is required for them. So not only is it like country rules, but then people have city specific rules as well.
Yes, for sure. And we actually learned that. Luckily, we found this out just in time because we flew into Zurich and then
Hmm.
Zurich over. And Switzerland has also different rules. And he was actually, nobody could tell me if we were going to clear customs in Switzerland or in Italy. And we had an 11-hour layover. And
Oh,
so, I could technically not leave the airport, but then you're sitting there with the dog for 11 hours. Or if I wanted to get a hotel for the night, we had to get a different import permit just to allow us to leave the airport. So yes, you do your homework, because otherwise it's going to cost you a lot of time and money. So
Right, right. So you're looking at buying a house and doing some renovations. So are you looking still at the €1 houses, or are you looking now just differently and just something to update and kind of make your own?
well, it's been a very interesting process because the house that I'm looking to buy, the red tape and the bureaucracy in Italy are very real.
Mm,
Okay. So like it's no joke, it's no exaggeration. So the house that I'm looking to buy, I made an offer on back in April, and we still don't have all the paperwork to be able to buy it. So it's 7 months in.
wow.
It's not a €1 house, but it actually, there's two €1 houses attached to it. So they're sort of like a buy one, get two free.
Oh, okay.
But the €1 houses, they're not all piles of bricks, but the ones
Mm,
that are here are piles of bricks. And you can't completely tear them down and rebuild
no.
them. You have to maintain the integrity of this is a, 100-year-old city. So you have to
Mhm.
maintain that integrity. So it's a big project if you want to take on a €1 home. So I didn't go that route, but I am trying to buy a house. It does need significant renovations, but it's in a
Mm,
beautiful piazza here. And if we can get the paperwork across the line, basically it's been on the market for a while, but the owners did renovations back in the 70s and they didn't get the proper permits. So now they have to get it. We had to get an architect in, and the architect has to resubmit that work from the 70s, and the municipality then has to sign off on it, and then it could go for sale. So long story short.
right.
Yes.
Well, and I think people a lot of people think, and before, I mean, before I knew this, I thought the same thing, that I can understand the outside you need to be careful with because it's old, but I think what a lot of people don't realize, like even inside renovations need to be approved and have to have an architect. So even though it's inside your home, you can't just say, "Oh, I want to make my kitchen bigger, so I'm going to tear out this wall." You have to have an architect and permission to even tear out a wall within your home to do any renovation at all.
Yes. Yeah, I actually just did a TikTok on this the other day because the people watch the movie Under the Tuscan Sun,
Oh,
and
yes.
oh, guys, you can't
It's
just
a
go in
movie.
there.
It's a
It's a
movie.
I love that movie. I love
It's
it.
great, but it's not reality.
It's not reality. It's not reality. The fact that all the paperwork that she could just buy that house, that all the paperwork was ready to go, that's unrealistic. And then, yeah, you can't just go into a house and start knocking down walls, to your point. That's going to be approved, and that takes months. So,
Yeah, and that's another reason why those €1 homes are in theory great. I can buy a home for €1 and and you have time to renovate. I think generally they give about 2 or 3 years. That might be negotiable, but that's kind of usually it. But you have to have an architect design everything, get approval for it. So it's not just, oh, I'm going to go over and do, what I want in the home. And I mean, if the architect can design and do that, that's fine, but it's a process and it's an expense and time people aren't expecting because they think they can just come in and do it easy. But it takes a long time to do anything in Italy. I'm just gonna say just to
yes,
do anything.
yes, very
So
true.
so that's a test of your patience.
Well, I started to get impatient, and because there's no timeline on when it'll get approved. So I started to look at a different apartment in the meantime,
Mhm.
that needs less renovations. It's basically a shell right now, and you can get a small little apartment for 20,000, 30,000. It's not super expensive. But now there's a different type of red tape because The house is owned by a family, and there's 4 different levels, and each of the brothers owns a different level. And now it's the brothers fighting about selling one of the levels to me.
Oh no.
I'm meeting with my real estate agent later today to see where we're at with that one. So you just got to be patient. Pack your patience when you come to Italy.
Well, and it's so kind of ironic in a way that a lot of times when we move abroad, one of the top reasons is people say, I want a more relaxed, slower paced lifestyle. Sometimes I say, be careful what you wish for,
Yes.
because and I understand that you do want it, but when we're used to busy, busy, go, 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 things get done very quickly. Yes, we want to relax and go slower, but we don't want things to take longer to get done. And that just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It's if you want that slower paced lifestyle, everything is slower.
Yeah. Yes. Everything.
But so that's in process. So that's
That's in
good.
progress.
How when was the last time you were in the United States?
June. Yeah, end
Okay.
of June. Yeah, I go
Okay.
home quite frequently. I'll go
Mhm.
home in a couple weeks for Thanksgiving. So I do go home and see my family quite frequently.
And so how are the prices of things in general, like food and things that you buy, to compare what you spend in Italy compared to what you would spend in the United States for like grocery shopping and bread, milk, like those kind of day-to-day items?
I would say they're pretty comparable. Most things are pretty comparable. Uh, there's some things that are much cheaper here. Wine, as an example. I mean, you can go out to dinner. We went out the other night and they were serving liters of wine, so bigger than one bottle, a typical bottle. And they were €5. Five
Wow.
years, that kind of stuff. But I would say, while the prices are relatively comparable, the freshness is by far stronger over here. All the fresh vegetables, most restaurants will cook seasonally. So they'll take
Mhm.
what's, being harvested at the moment and incorporate it into their menus. Um, you know, Italy's big for their pasta and breads and things like that. The ingredients that are in American pasta and breads and flours are not permitted. Some of them are illegal here in Italy. So, people think, oh, you're going to put on so much weight because you're going to be eating all this pasta and bread. And I lost weight
Mhm.
being here. So, and I don't know if it has to do with the chemicals that are missing, but you do a lot more walking around as well. But I would say that it's the quality that of the food that's so much better here.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think definitely the chemicals and the additives and the things that is put into food in the US and Canada. I'm from Canada, so
Okay.
North America in general I think is not good, and you're right, and the walking, right? So that
Yeah.
I've had people say, even my daughter. So one time, so we lived in Italy very, very briefly, and then, but when we first moved abroad, or I guess it wasn't the first because Italy was first. She was quite small. But then in Costa Rica. And I did a trip to Italy and I bought this amazing balsamic vinegar reduction. So I brought it back with me to Costa Rica. And in Costa Rica, I made this basic salad. It was tomato, cucumber, feta cheese, and then the balsamic vinegar. And we loved it. And so we were doing a trip up to Canada and I brought the vinegar with me. I mean, that's how good it was. I'm bringing this vinegar all over
Wow.
the world. And I made the exact salad. And she took a bite, took a couple bites, and she's like, "What did you do wrong?" I'm like, what do you mean? It's tomato, cucumber, feta cheese, same balsamic vinegar. She's
Yeah.
like, no, she's like, it doesn't taste as good. And I said, well, we're using Canada tomatoes, Canada cucumber, and the taste and flavor is just not as good. And I think people, I guess in a way, kind of don't realize that there are certain things that taste better because the sun is different, the soil is different, the water is different, and it makes, and the freshness of things make it so much better.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. And I'm learning a lot about, how they farm here because in Sicily there are massive, olive groves and for grapes, for wine, and a ton of different things too. And the way that they farm here, even I was on an olive grove the other night, and which sounds surreal to even say, oh, I spent Thursday afternoon on the olive grove, but they don't even, because these trees are 30, 40 years old, and they basically enrich themselves with the soil. So they found a way to continue because water is kind of tight in Sicily at the moment, and but they don't need to water these trees because of the way that they have the nutrients in the soil, and it just sort of you're taking from the land and giving back to the land, and it's an incredible process that they have.
Yeah, I was several years ago, I was at a vineyard, and it's like a lot of vineyards, they also have like a mini farm. And it was in the Tuscany region. And she said what they do, I want to say I think it's called viticulture. I could be wrong on that. Like it's a step above even organic. And so the way that they plant things, like they cycle things. So they know, like she said, and I can't remember the specifics. She said, like this certain vegetable we'll plant this year, and then we'll move it over to this space because it gives the soil certain nutrients. These ones take certain nutrients away. And they kind of cycle things. And she said very similar too. They had a number of grapes for one of the wines that they make. And I think she said they were about 60 years old. And she said, it doesn't matter if it's a drought or if we get a ton of rain or anything. She said, they produce consistently. She's like, we're going to get roughly, I can't remember how many bottles that she said, but she says, it doesn't matter. She's like, when you take care of the soil and they don't use any pesticides. And then they have a partnership. So they do some vegetables and wine and things like that. And then one of their neighbors, which I mean, it's huge land, so it's not like they're really close, um, has, I want to say, I think it was cows or pigs, or maybe I don't think it was both. But anyway, so they help them finance the operation of the meat, making sure they stay healthy and do everything. And then when it comes time to package and slaughter and things like that, they get so many animals without having to have them on their farm. And then their fruit vegetable type thing, they share and give. So it's like farmers work together. They have their own farm and vineyard and things like that. They produce what they're good at, what their soil's good for, and then they help each other and work together and exchange. Sometimes, as I said, some of it is finance, some of it is just an exchange, like for other ones that have chickens and they get eggs and they give them stuff. And it really is that community that works together, and everything is so fresh and taken care of and done right because they're the community, and it's a big community, and it's a lot of space. But I just thought it was really incredible and so good, and nice that everybody who works together is very non GMO, non pesticides, non like all of that stuff. They really know what they're doing with their soil, with what they're producing, growing or raising.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up that example because on this olive grove that we went to, they're actually a soap manufacturer. So what they do is they harvest their olives, they give them to, a plant to help press and things like that. But the waste from olive oil production can then be made into soap. So it's an exchange that they do that, one produces the olive oil, and it is apparently this process has gone on for years, that a lot of times that's how you would get paid. You would drop off your olives, they would make the olive oil, and in return, you would get some soap for your community. So, so yeah, so it's using every single part of the whole production process and making it to good use to ensure there's no waste. It was incredible
Right.
to learn about.
No, that is, and I mean, it's so good on so many levels because I said like it's reducing the waste. People are good at what they do, right? Like I wouldn't know what to do or how to make like there's a lot of things I wouldn't, and so it's nice that it's okay. I produce this. I know what I'm doing. This is what I'm making, and so can do this and somebody else does this and somebody else does this. And it really is that part of the community that everybody helps each other out. Everybody knows each other. There is no waste, and it's people are doing what they enjoy doing as well.
For sure.
Yeah, I just love Italy. I need to get back there. It's been a while since I've been there, but I'll have to make a trip. Probably next year for sure. This year's almost over, so next year for
Yeah,
sure.
it's going fast.
Yeah. And so you have community there, you have your dog there. The house search is it's ongoing, but
Okay.
you don't want to rush into anything at the same point as well. I had somebody I was just talking to the other day, and I mean, they just, and he knew, he said after, he's like, I can't help it. I just rush into doing things. And he ended up, they have a place in Italy now, but they had a bit of it was a challenge. And I'm glad they didn't give up. They had a really rough patch in Nicaragua, got taken advantage of, lost a lot of money, then moved to Italy. And I can't remember the name of the place. And, um, and he's like just so excited to be there. They're just so happy they're going to be there for Christmas and enjoy for their first Christmas and stuff. So it's lovely.
Yeah. I'll be here for my first Christmas too this year, I think. I don't plan on going home. If I go home for Thanksgiving, a lot
Mhm.
of times, I don't go home for Christmas. So
Yeah, well, and that makes sense. And so do you have already a list of people saying, when can I come visit you? I want to come visit you.
yes, well, it's, for my friends and family, it's a big change because I was in Asia for the last 5 years. I lived for a year in Indonesia. I lived for 4 years prior to that in Singapore. And the thought of them coming to visit me on the other side of the world is just like it's too much to even consider. So now that I'm, from Detroit to my family's in Detroit and Pittsburgh. So, and especially starting this coming spring, there'll
Hmm.
be direct flights from New York to Sicily, which will
Oh,
be
great.
United just announced a flight. I think American Airlines might have announced a flight to Catania. So that will be really great too, because all I have to do is get over to New York and then it's, one flight versus right now yeah, I'm going home for Thanksgiving. It's going to take me 4 flights. It's going to take a long time, but I think that the shorter the flight, yes, the more that my friends and family are like, oh, I could do this. Yeah, I could come over for a couple
Yeah.
of days. And I'm like, I just wait until I get my house ready though, because I'm living in a temporary place right now that I
Mm.
showed up with my bags and nobody told me it was really not furnished. And my goods are still on a boat coming from Indonesia. So it's I'm living bare bones here with a single
Well,
bed, but yeah, I got a roof over my head and a bed to sleep in. That's all I
and
need.
you're in Italy.
And I'm in Italy. So yeah.
Well, and part of that, I mean, it's in a way, it's a good thing that your stuff is still on its way because then you would have to move it again once you find your place, reno, and things like that. And often think too, when we do things like this, we really realize it makes us realize at first we're think, oh my gosh, I don't have anything. How am I going to live? This is going to be so hard. Then once we don't have anything for a while, we think, I don't really need much.
Yeah.
Like I don't need a lot of stuff and things. There's basics, of course, and there's things, of course, that make things more comfortable. But the need of things and just kind of downsizing and simplifying brings a level of almost a level of freedom of I
Yes.
don't have a bunch of stuff I don't need and it's just less stuff to take care of, clean, whatever else. And it's just I'm I don't want to say I'm a minimalist because I'm definitely not a minimalist, but since I left Canada, I have really reduced the amount of stuff that I have, and it's kind of nice not to, because I look at things too, and I think, do I really need this item? Even if it's clothing. If it's clothing, I think, well, if I buy a dress, because I love dresses, if I buy a dress, I have to get rid of a dress because I don't need 40 dresses. Like, there's just no need for it. And so, and I now am more over the years, really, it's more about experiences.
Mhm.
Like, it's X amount for whatever people like, whether it's clothing or, you know, whatever they're collecting, or whatever it is. I think if I spend this much on this item, what experience could I do? Where could I go on a trip, or spend a weekend, or go do whatever it is? And so, um, for me, I am becoming a little bit more minimalist, and I use that word very loosely. Um, but I just think of, whenever I go to buy something, I'm like, do I really need that? And if it's
Yeah.
X amount of dollars, like, I could go here, do this, or have whatever experience, or even just fancy nice dinner. Like, oh, I
Mhm.
could go to that restaurant for this. And that I would remember more than another pair of shoes.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I've moved enough times, and the moving is just so much of a pain. But yeah, so I declutter with every move, and I'm now down to my life fits in 28 boxes. And you do realize that, oh, you don't need most of this stuff, but it is at a place now that I've been living out of two suitcases for almost 5 months. And it'd be
Mm.
okay, but the weather's changing here in Italy, and I didn't
Mm.
pack any sweaters, so I have had to do a
Right.
little bit of shopping
Hmm.
because I just
Well,
don't
I
have
mean,
enough clothes.
that is understandable. There are things, and the weather does change a lot of times, people, because, under the Tuscan sun, that it's always beautiful in Italy. The weather's always warm and perfect.
Yeah,
But
we've
that's
had a
not
lot of rain lately. It's been a little colder because Sicily does sit, a lot of the houses here don't
Mhm.
have air conditioning, they don't have heating because they just don't need it.
Right.
Because the weather remains pretty constant. But yeah, I lived on the equator for the last 5 years, so I get cold very, very easily when it gets down to only like it was 21 the other day and I was freezing. So, uh,
Well, anything under 20, I start to get chilly, and 15, it's cold for me, which
yeah.
is my friends in Canada when I go back, and if it's getting into fall, or the odd time I'll go back for Christmas about every 5 years, and they just think I'm crazy. They're like, "You used to live here." And I said, "I know, and I left." Like,
Yeah.
I don't like minus anything. I don't like, cold weather at all. But there definitely are parts of Italy that it does get cold, especially when you're kind of central up to the north. Florence, I know, gets quite cold. I've had to have some winter clothes being there, and so it's not always those beautiful pictures and videos that we see when people are traveling. They're going during the great time, but it does get cold, and the weather does change. And it's a good thing for people to realize too, that a lot of the houses don't have heat or AC. So, the weather changes, climate change. There could be just a really cold snap for a week or something that, is below normal temperature. And we still want to have sometimes a few of those warmer blankets, extra warm clothes that we only wear on a rare occasion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, when is your stuff supposed to be coming? Do you know, like, how long that is? That's just another be patient.
It was oh, it's just a long story, but it's because when I left my company, part of the contract that I was under, it was included moving my things to wherever I was going, and they put it on basically the slowest boat ever, and the people that arranged it didn't I don't think they realized that the port that they were sending it to is not Sicily. Like, Italy is a big country. So it
Mm-hmm.
was meant to go it was meant to arrive October 20th over in Salerno, but then I
Okay.
just got an update that it's going to Naples November 1st. It then needs to
Okay.
clear customs.
Mm.
I think I have to pay an import fee, which that's people should know that too. If you want to pack up your whole life and move it over, you're going to have to pay import taxes if you don't have residency yet. So it's something you should know. Good reason to declutter. And so yeah, so I'm really hoping that I have it before I leave for Thanksgiving, because otherwise I'm going to have to buy a whole bunch of more clothes, which I really don't want to do.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's that shipping of stuff definitely is another thing for patience. And no, as you said, knowing that wherever you're going to be, what is the nearest port? Because then from the port, there's the ground transportation to get to wherever it is that people are living. And if you're not there, where does it get stored? What is the cost for that? Is another thing for people to take into consideration. Because if you have your residency and you're staying and that's fine, but if it's still in process, or for people that are doing the 90 days kind of in and out, if you've got to be out for those 90 days and your stuff comes, do you have somebody to arrange to at least get it to your place and bring it in and have that done? Because otherwise, how much is your storage for 90 days for all of your stuff? I don't know how that works there.
Well, luckily, and this is something that it's been incredible for, to be welcomed into this community, that basically everybody's like, don't worry, this one has a garage, this one has a garage, this one has a room. There's plenty of places. I'm not going to have to pay for storage. It's just
That's
a
good.
question of where is it going and whose house is it going into? But they're like, don't worry, there's plenty of rooms. We'll find a place for your 28 boxes. And okay.
Mm. Well, I mean, that's fantastic. And again, that's why having a community and building those relationships is very important. And having a bit of an expat community. I know some people that want to move and they don't want any expats. They want to be with the locals and things. And that's fine. That's what they want. But again, it's still building up that community. The thing about having friends that are expats is they've been there before.
Mhm.
They've done it. They know, they understand, where unless the local people, unless before they've lived abroad, you don't understand what you haven't gone through,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of them, they wouldn't be dealing, if they're locals, they wouldn't be dealing with a lot of like imports and personal items and things like that through the process, because they haven't done it. And that is also a good thing, as I said, about having some friends that are expats, because they know they've gone through it. There's lots of times like, oh, I wished I would have known that sooner. Right. But because they've done it, they can give that, oh, don't do this or don't do that, or this I found out after is a better way of handling or dealing with something.
Yeah. And that's what I'm finding is, all the people that have welcomed me in. Yes, there's a lot of expats, but there's quite a few locals as well that they're super excited. They're so incredibly welcoming. We go down to this one bar right around the corner. It's a coffee shop during the day, but also serves. And we were there when they were closing the other night, and they're like, well, we have dinner at our house. Come on over. I mean, like, we're going to have dinner. And like, I mean, because they're super excited. They want to practice their English as much as we want to practice our Italian. And, they don't see us as, you know, a hindrance. It's more, we're helping to build up their businesses. We're helping to bring other people to these smaller towns that
Mm.
have, sort of the older population, because a lot of people have moved away, because for jobs, for family, for, all good reasons. But,
Mhm.
to see the life come back into the community, the locals are very, very excited about that as well, which is also really great, because if I need something, we can Google Translate and, I learned the other day, I have a propane stove here,
Mhm.
and I don't know how to use a propane stove, so somebody had to show me, but my propane tank was missing. I didn't have one, so I've learned a bombula is a propane tank, and I asked somebody, they asked another guy, and then next thing you know, you get over to your house within 5 minutes, he's going to be there to deliver it. And it's like, okay, so they're super welcoming, and it's really good to have a mix of both,
Mm.
the locals and the expats, because we're all trying to figure this out together.
Right, right. And I think as you said too, especially the smaller communities, because there's so many of them that the populations are dwindling, unfortunately, because as you said, so many people are moving away for a variety of reasons, and they all make sense. Um, but but going there and being in those smaller communities to help kind of revive them if we can and keep them going, it's a lot. I don't want to use the word better. I mean, locally it is better than, and I think the appreciation is there more as opposed to being in Florence, going to Rome, and the big cities where populations are big. There's lots of expats coming in, immigration, and then Airbnb issues, and then they're just not as happy, and
Yeah.
understandably, I
Mhm.
I get it. I see both sides of the situation. So I think too, if people are considering Italy, to look at some of those places that maybe are a little bit smaller, where you still get kind of everything you need, and you can easily take the train into those major, bigger cities and enjoy them for a day or a weekend, and then come back to your peace and quiet.
Yeah. Yes. And that was something that I considered as well, the transportation aspect when you
Hmm.
consider a big city versus a small city. Unfortunately, the city that I'm in, it requires having a car, and
Hmm.
driving in Italy is wild. Absolutely wild. But it's nice because you can just I have a rental car right now. I can't buy a car until I get residency, but it is nice to just be able to get in the car and like, okay, I got to get out of this town and, go have lunch on the beach. It's 30 minutes away, and you can take a day trip somewhere and stay overnight, and you can go to those big cities. I have to return the rental car on Sunday, so I'll be heading into Palermo, where can
Yeah.
do a lot more major shopping compared to here, where it's a little bit, you don't have Zara here, you don't have H&M here. So
You don't need that stuff. You don't need that stuff anyway.
you don't, but every once in a while, it's
Yeah,
nice
but
to
that's
sit
why
and
that's why
go
you have the
shop.
day trip where you spend time and you
Exactly.
go to Palermo or somewhere else and do a little shopping and spend the day there. I have a place in Montenegro, and
Okay.
there's no Amazon anything. Like there's
Yeah.
the delivery. I mean, there's certain things that you can order and get delivered, but I just say that I don't miss it. I don't need it. I don't It's not there, so you don't think about it. And
Yeah.
then I'm not buying stuff. So then when I come to North America, I'm like, oh, this is on out. Oh, I can just get it delivered. Oh, I'm going to buy that. Oh, I'm going to buy that. And then I think, I'm still careful with what I buy because it's the weight of the luggage bringing it home, but I don't miss it most of the time.
Yeah. It's just nice to check it out. If
Hmm.
on TikTok or something, I see a new product that I want, oh, look at that face cream, or I want to try that out. And you can't go to your corner store
Right.
and go get it. Like, yeah, it's a day trip somewhere. So,
Right. You have to write that down, remember, and then it comes down to,
yes.
do you really need it? Did you really want it? Or if you forgot about it, it's like, guess I didn't need that.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. I have in my Amazon cart, my shopping cart, and eventually, every couple of months I clear it out. Like, I didn't need that. I didn't need that. I didn't need that.
Right. That's true. So Amanda, I mean, you're obviously loving Italy, and I completely understand why, because I love it too. And costs are different, and if people, are looking at getting places where they can renovate or live, those smaller towns, places will be substantially cheaper. And then even if you have to get a car, if you're paying less for a home, you get the car, still can be a lot less than in some of the major cities. But if somebody's kind of on the fence, they've never moved abroad, they want to, they're like, "Oh, I want to," but they're kind of nervous. So what piece of advice or couple pieces of advice would you give somebody who wants to move, but they're just kind of scared to take that leap?
Well, I do talk with a lot of people that I connect with on TikTok and, and all these other things too that, I ask people all the time to consider first and foremost their why. What is the why? Because you have to have that goal in mind because it is a process. And I don't try to sugarcoat it with people and say that you're not going to hit a ton of road bumps across the. We've all done it. Okay. We've hit, there's been road bumps. There's ways to get over it, but always remember your why of, because you're going to want to come back to that and say, you know, 2 years from now, you're going to be living and settled down in your home in Italy and all this stuff that you went through. It's not going to matter anymore because you did it, and so keep coming back to that, keep coming back to your why. Um, and consider that just you're going to have to be open-minded as well. I have another American that is moving here from Costa Rica, actually, and he has very limited experience abroad. And, he's coming in with this American mindset of this is how we're going to do things. And I'm like, you have to be a
No.
little bit more patient. Like, it are going to be a little bit different than what you're used to. But that's a lot of times it's better different,
Yeah.
so you have to consider that too. I would consider all your pros and cons. I made a little guidebook for people, and I did it myself too. When I consider certain things that are so expensive in the US compared to all the trouble of getting to this place, totally worth it. I'm talking with my parents that are paying an arm and a leg for health insurance in the United States. Their property taxes are through the roof. Even cell phone plans. I just got my cell phone bill from the US. It's insane. Whereas here, you can get a cell phone plan for $10 a month. So when you start to weigh all those costs, you also, again, consider your why of, yes, there's hurdles, but look at how much
Mhm.
money you're going to be saving and look at the quality of life that you're going to have. So yeah, I think that's the biggest piece of advice of just keep coming back to you're going to get through this. You're not the only one that has gone through this process. And there's people out there that are like myself. I mean, I give my advice to anybody that will listen of, it's not an easy thing to do, but once you get there, all this is going to be a distant memory of all the hurdles that you went through. So it's going to be fine.
Absolutely. And I mean, if we think about it too, even just in the United States, buying a house, there's hurdles. You got to go to the bank, you got to get a mortgage, there's paperwork. Sometimes it doesn't work out. They need paperwork again. And but people kind of forget that stuff because once they're in their house and they love it and they're happy, it's like, oh yeah, I bought a house. And we don't go back and think of, oh, remember how many times we had to do that paperwork or how many times we went. It's just gone. And it's the same in a way of once you're there. It's a process, there's challenges, it does get frustrating. Millions of people do it every year of to various destinations around the world, and it's doable. It's just have patience and enjoy the journey because as you said, there's a reason why, and the end result is fantastic.
Yes, for sure.
So I just want to say thank you very much for your time, Amanda. I really appreciate it. So thank you.
No, thank you. This has been, I love talking about my journey and, if it helps one person, two people, great. I'm always here to help out anybody that's, considering making the move. because it is worth it. After all is said and done, there's going to be frustrations, but it's worth it. I promise.
Yeah, definitely.